Welcome to Quantum Canine. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Tricia.
And today we're going to be doing our special Rowe Camp and Conference Center special. Kevin presented at the Rowe Camp in Rowe, Massachusetts this weekend, and we have a lot of great footage from that, a lot of dogs. People come to learn about their dogs in a beautiful atmosphere, lots of natural beauty and great food. So we had a really great time, and I actually learned what I consider something really major about dogs over the weekend, which is a lot of these people come with problem dogs. They've got all these problem behaviors, and they want to know what's wrong with the dog.
Right.
And even though you've said it many times, it really, somehow it came crystal clear to me over the weekend that there's nothing wrong with the dog per se, and there actually isn't even a dog in there per se.
Right.
That the dog, its behavior only exists in response to its owner and how the owner's acting.
Right.
And this is an idea that took a really long time. It gestated in my mind for many years. I remember when I went to my brother's house, he said, "You have to come help me with my dog. He's crazy in the house. He won't come outside when we want him to. When he goes outside, he's a maniac." And I went there and I said, "Okay, we're going to take him outside." The dog tried to balk, put his hands out. And I just kept walking. And I took him outside and I had food and I had a ball and I threw the ball and gave him food, threw the ball, gave him food, came back in the house, had him lay down nice and quiet, and my brother said, "That is like a different dog."
Right.
And at the time I thought, well, that's just because you're my brother and you won't listen to me and you won't do what I have to say. I didn't really think about that it actually was a different dog.
Right.
Because the energy, like when the dog tried to balk and not go outside, I didn't feed that nervousness. I didn't say, "Oh, poor doggy, you don't want to go out. Oh, I feel so bad. It's okay, it's okay." I just walked.
Right.
I just took him right outside. And then when we went outside, there was a reason, to be outside. He didn't just go off hunting and sniffing by himself. I had food, I had a ball, we engaged in this play, and then when we came inside, I just didn't let him run around and be a maniac. I held him at my side, I taught him to be calm, but it wasn't like the dog was he was a different dog. And so during the weekend, it was interesting to see people would have that reaction. They'd say, "Wow, that was like a different dog."
Right.
When you were acting with the dog, they said, "That was a different dog." And what you're saying is, it actually is. So even if you address these problem behaviors and you personally fix the problem behavior, if they go back with the owner, if the owner doesn't change how it's acting in accordance with the dog's just going to be the same. That there's this energy circuit that actually creates who the dog is.
Right.
And that we had a woman who brought a Doberman who was incredibly fearful. And the Doberman was really paralyzed by its fear. And when you started working with the dog, she said, that's not my dog. That's a totally different dog.
Mm-hmm.
But what she was doing when the dog acted scared and nervous was saying, "Oh, poor baby. Oh, you poor thing. I feel so sorry." And petting it and sort of feeding into its nervousness and fear.
Right. And also, we start the show with the Franz Kafka quote.
Right.
And that is more true than Kafka ever imagined that to be true. Consciousness is energy reflecting back on itself. That's what I've learned from animals.
And what you mean is the dog, who he is.
Right. He's an energy circuit with the owner for good or for quote-unquote bad. So what he's doing is he's projecting into the owner, and the owner has an internal emotional vibration, and 99.99% of us aren't even aware what that is because we picked it up when we were infants even. And the dog then expresses it physically. They're not mental beings, they're physical, emotional beings. They go by feel. So he will pick up a vibration and then express it. So your brother's dog balking at the door where there's some threshold of discovery your brother balks at.
Right.
So that's a physical manifestation. And then we put all that on the dog's mind and we want to fix it, to change it. And my mission now is to first identify it. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to change it. First identify what is that impasse in the circuitry. So when I work with a problem dog, I get the energy moving. And the movement of energy heals everything. And that's what heals a dog. That's the information on how to be is in the movement of the energy itself. It's not in a mental thing.
And so the owner is moving in an energetic way, and that's influencing...
Or not moving.
Or not, and that's influencing the dog's
Right.
behavior. And we think something's wrong with the dog.
Right, and the dog is perfectly adapting to the emotional context of its owner. It's perfectly adaptive. It's being completely correct. And this, in fact, is the whole story of early man and domestication of the wolf, or whatever subspecies of wolf we're really actually dealing with, is man wanted something, that gazelle, the this, the that, some kind of prey, that's a vibration, can't get it, and wolf became part of that circuitry, and now they're hunting together. So that's no different than play this out many thousands of years and elaborate, complexities of our modern technological life and our emotional issues. It's still the same want, resolving unresolved energy. Early man, all he cared about was getting a woolly mammoth. That's unresolved energy in his deep gut. And the wolf picks it up. Somehow they work together. I have the shaman theory of domestication. And that continues up to this day, dog picking up internal deepest currents in the owner and acting them out. Because what animals hate, what we all hate, is stuck energy. Whenever you see energy stuck, you want to move it. So if you walk in a room and somebody's holding back, they're depressed, they're stressed, they're something, you do the opposite to try to get it going. That's exactly canine behavior.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to try to restate this in my simple mind. What we have is we have an owner who has this emotional sort of baggage from their own domestication.
Yes.
And they are acting in a way in accordance with that.
The dog is?
Well, the person
Who's
is.
they? Okay, the owner,
The person is acting in accordance with their own emotional issues and their own issues about domestication, whatever that is. And they're acting that out physically in relationship with their dog.
No, see, the owner is not acting it out.
Oh, well, they're not acting it out, but they're acting in response to it?
No, the owner is vibrating internally because they're not moving it because, A, we're either unaware of it or we're too afraid.
So it's there and we're vibrating in accordance with it.
Right.
And the
unbeknownst to our higher processes.
Right, we're not conscious of it.
Right.
And that's how we interact with our dog. The dog picks up on it.
Right.
And we're not moving it.
Right.
So the no energy is moving, so the dog gets stuck in these problem behaviors is what you're saying.
Right, as an attempt to express what we won't.
So it's not so much that I take my brother's dog, the dog balks at this threshold, and I just walk right through. That's not just that you've taught me how to handle a dog.
Right, no, that's...
It's that he has some...
But when the dog balked, it could have triggered your judgments, and it involuntarily does, but you subscribed to a law of energy and felt movement, let's go.
Right.
And the dog could feel movement in you, so, oh yeah, that makes movement, and he just went with you. He didn't try to bite. It made total sense to him. It felt right. So you created an energy circuit and didn't play into the dog's old habit. For the first second, he applied his model of humanoid from your brother onto you, because you're a humanoid.
Right.
And it kicked right up. You triggered this old memory. Right. So the pattern kicked right up. But then you just participated in an energy system. We're going.
Right.
So the dog, oh yeah, I feel energy by being with you. So you were changing the way the dog was processing stress, if you will. You weren't changing the dog. You were changing the way energy worked within the dog, which does ultimately change the dog.
So problem behavior, correct me again if I'm wrong, it manifests when we have a judgment about something the dog is doing?
Well, the judgment about what the dog is doing reflects the judgment we have against this energy that's stuck.
That's stuck, our emotional stuck energy.
Right.
Okay.
So if you look at the language relative to your dog, you are now getting the language about the judgment that keeps the energy stuck. Therefore, and your dog's acting out that judgment, if you will. We call it problem behavior, and I call it an opportunity.
So we're gonna in a minute we're gonna look at this clip of this Doberman who was really paralyzed by fear. It was really fearful dog, and I think everybody that was there could see how the owner really, she really felt bad that the dog felt this fear, but what she was doing, she was feeding it because she kept trying to soothe the dog, which wasn't helping the dog move the energy.
Right, and no matter what you do, if the energy's stuck, if there's fear in the system, and you pile on all these positive experiences, you're rewarding fear.
Right.
Because the fear is, I like to give the example of if there's a top with a wobble on it.
Right.
Well, or let me use the example, there's a child on a swing and it gets a kink in it, and the more you push, which is theoretically positive, the bigger the wobble gets.
Right.
And pretty soon the kid is scared, more afraid because of this violent twisting that's happening in the... so just putting input positive doesn't necessarily mean it's being perceived as positive from the dog's point of view.
Right, and also the other thing, this owner, a wonderful dog owner, don't get me wrong, it's something we all do, was sort of like my brother did. If the dog was feeling fearful and was moving away, she would just move with the dog. Instead of moving the dog
along some
forward,
kind of flow.
she was just kind of pulling it along. So the first thing we see you do is we see you running the dog, helping him move, and a couple times he doesn't really want to move. But
I don't know what's on the footage yet, but first I triggered his fear. And that speaks to the owner thing. She was terrified of triggering this dog's fear. So everything she was doing, she thought it was rehabilitating or this or that, but it was really avoiding facing her own fear that the dog his fear was triggering in her.
Right.
That's really the energy dynamic.
Right.
It's not about the dog.
Right.
So helping her heal this dog, deep down in her subconscious, she really was trying to heal her own fear.
Right.
But every time the dog manifested fear, she was so terrified, she was trying to stop the fear by giving him positive experiences.
And so she was also trying to keep her own fear down.
Yes.
Right.
Right. So the paralysis in the dog reflects some kind of paralysis in the owner.
And you could see after you'd worked the dog, she did feel a little bit sense of relief.
Empowerment.
And empowerment.
Right. Because the fear is paralyzing her.
Right.
And by working with her dog's fear, she's going to start to feel, every cell in her body is going to start to feel, wow, that doesn't have to run me anymore.
Right.
And then you can apply it other places.
So the first thing you did was you ran him to get energy moving, and and then another thing you did was you were sweeping his feet.
Right.
And what is that doing for the whole energy circuit?
Well, I've said earlier that animal consciousness is the confluence of two basic systems: the big brain in the head and balance. That's mostly about balance, and the little brain in the gut, and that's fundamentally about hunger. So when I sweep their feet, I'm trying to wipe the hard drive clean. You got all this junk on your computer and you want to wipe it clean once in a while, boot it up again. So when you sweep a dog's feet, you are knocking him off balance, and you have an opportunity he can boot up again with a more wholesome attitude, and that lets you access him.
Wow. And the next thing you
Which,
did...
by the way, is there was the tortoise and the hippo after this 2004 tsunami. I invite people to look that up. The earthquake wiped the hard drive clean in that tortoise, that very primal animal. And when he booted back up, there was that young hippo, and they bonded. And there was no biological model to account for that.
But it was the shaking of the...
It was actually, the balance circuitry got totally disrupted by earthquakes, which is why animals are so aware of earthquakes and afraid of earthquakes, because it's triggering their balance, fear falling. So they get to ground, firmer ground. They want to go to terra firma. But it wipes the hard drive clean, and they boot up again. After the earthquake in San Francisco during the World Series, I remember how festive everybody was in the streets. They're like block parties. 19 people were died. They had there was some kind of public calamity there, and people were aware of that, but there was this air of festivity in the streets until it got a little old with 3-4 days without power and water.
So it's like the great earthquake god coming and sweeping everybody's feet.
Yeah, everybody kind of swept away all your static electric woes of the day. And you boot up again. That's why storms are exciting.
So that's what it means when you were sweeping your feet. And then the next thing you
Which,
did...
by the way, is why we say falling in love.
Right.
You're giving up a previous frame of reference and falling into a new one.
Then you rolled him on his side, which I think some people could interpret as you were trying to get him to submit.
Right, right.
But you weren't actually doing that. What were you doing when you were rolling him on his side and and soothing him and petting him. You were trying to get him to go down.
I was, when you are in a true feeling, you feel weightless. So when you get it, what dogs love to roll on the ground and on their back because they're picking up all this energy from the earth, and all that the flow of energy is weightlessness. So when you roll a dog on his back, you're connecting his brain stem and his spinal cord to the ground, the earth, and he's feeling energized. Now there's not actually material energy flowing, but stress in his cells is being released. And it's as if he is being energized by energy coming up from the earth. And as far as I'm concerned, that's how it works. There is energy coming up from the earth. It's a virtual energy reflected in the physiology of animals. But at any rate, I roll him on the ground so he feels weightless. And he's taken the weight off his feet. The weight of the world is off his feet, off his back.
Right.
And he's wallowing in and you have to feel sensual to wallow in the mud.
Right.
And so I'm reconnecting him with his primal systems.
And then you get him to jump into a cart that's a little bit rickety.
Right. Well,
and is that the balance thing again?
Actually, I think, as my memory serves me right, I couldn't get him to roll at all.
Right, that's right.
Until I had to release the panic, because these animals are always holding back, and they save the most deepest, dankest, darkest junk for the most critical moments. So I was doing all this stuff, see how much energy I could get going, but I couldn't get that last 0.01%. So I had to put him into a crisis that he could control.
Getting in and out of the cart was the
crisis.
Yes,
so that was a real problem with balance. And so he had this panic attack but he mastered the cart.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, so he started to feel in control of his world.
And then he could roll on the ground.
And then he could roll over and enjoy the ground.
Why don't we show the clip, and you can...
narrate as we go?
You can narrate over it, but at least now people have an idea when you are doing these things what the goal is.
Right.
And
what the method is to the madness.
Right, the method to the madness, as Shakespeare has said. So we'll run that clip.
Now this is after I had pointed my finger at him and he really freaked out. Now, actually this is interesting. Fear is static electric in the brain. And if you turn it into rhythmic wave function, which is a four-legged gait, so I'm getting him to turn his balance, big brain fixation on this electrical pressure in his brain. I'm getting him to turn it into a smooth wave function. He's also learning that when I stop and he stops, he's safe. He's starting to gain a little bit of control over me. He's starting to, because he's in his body, because he's running, he's starting to understand something. He's starting to feel what's happening. And I'm giving him these little visual cues. When my hand goes out, I stop. He stops. Now, from his point of view, he's controlling me because that's the way animals perceive anyhow. Whatever they feel causes stuff to happen. So he's running smoothly. Now, making these little, when he starts to go into panic, I make a little flick on the collar, and he's learning. I make myself uncomfortable by being panicky. And no animal wants to make themselves uncomfortable. And because I'm moving and not facing him, he's able to align with me physically and on some deep level emotionally. And he's learning, if I stop, Kevin stops. If I move, Kevin moves. He's starting to gain control. Even though I may be initiating it, the animal doesn't perceive it that way. Now I want to futz with his fussies. And you actually will see a little play solicitation in response. But he's still holding back in the battery. A couple times he almost did a little play bow, a little bit there. Now he's learning if he lays down, he's in control with me. So that's a very minor foot sweep. But that's why dogs start to play. So that's as far as I get with that little thing. Now I'm giving him changes of direction, everything I do. Now also I'm putting out a ton of energy which normally would send him through the roof. But because I'm giving it to him in a way where we're physically aligned, he's learning to master his fear and he's controlling me by being in his body rather than fixated on his head. Now I'm starting to use some control voice. If I say down, he lays down, that calms me, that controls me. And because he gained that much control over me, he's willing to allow me to touch him. He's actually feeling a touch instead of just being panic-stricken by a touch.
And what you haven't seen is how terrified this
He's
dog
actually,
is of men initially.
Right.
This would never be possible.
He actually voided his anal glands when I pointed at him and defecated.
Yeah, he's pretty terrified of men. And now look
Now, he's avoiding eye contact, so... And I want to roll that last bunt 10% that's right back there, right in front of right where my left hand is. I'm trying to... He won't give that up. He won't give that up. So I'll try that direction. He won't give that up. I mean, this is going to take a long time, but... And he's getting used to getting hit. This is his worst nightmare. Somebody touching him and a man smacking him.
You're not letting him balk.
Right. He balks. He makes himself uncomfortable. I'm not correcting him. I'm not commanding him. I do that a little bit later, again, just so that he learns that somebody yelling at him, that's no big deal. Now I'm facing him directly. Much harder for him to follow me. Much harder.
Right, he's balking a lot more when he has to face you than when you're running next to him.
Right. So I'm giving him pressure, going back to something easier for him, more familiar to him, where he gains some control. I think this is a hard thing for people to realize, is that we want the animal to feel in control of what's happening.
And it almost doesn't look like that's what you're doing here. It almost looks like you're
It
controlling him.
looks like I'm trying to control him, and nothing could be further from the truth.
You're trying to help him solve a problem? Is that what you're doing here?
I'm trying to help him feel that he's in control by being in his body. That'll give him tremendous calmness and self-confidence. That last little bit is want to get. It's also relevant that he's not taking food. And that's because his heart is shut down. If he would take food, in order to let something in, you've got to project something out. You've got to let go. We don't have it on this clip, but the next day, he's wolfing down food in my hand. Also, I'd like to mention that I'm pretty much working in a circle. Dogs do everything in a circle. So now I'm giving him a real stressful situation. Get up on a rickety platform. This really triggers the balance circuitry. And he is really panicky. And he solves the problem. And I'm part of that solution. And again, we saw this when we went to the veterinarian's office.
I'm absolutely amazed.
Now, of course, the owner is really upset because this is her worst nightmare. And it takes a lot of faith and courage on her part to let somebody do that to her dog. On day 2, he's flying to get into that trailer, like it's his idea, because he figured out how to
right?
Yes, he figured out how to master it. So by solving that, what I'm doing is objectifying the problem. Here's a problem of balance, danger, that you can easily solve. He can easily learn to solve that.
This is really exciting to all the other dogs.
Yeah, it does, because there's so much energy. He put out so much panic. So much stress was in the system.
So he wouldn't lay down all the way again, so you got to get him back in the cart again?
Right. So that he's still holding energy inside.
barn? Is that what you guys created that? Oh, let's go look in the barn.
But you can even see with his body, he's getting much more supple to the touch.
He definitely
When I
looks
touch
more
him, he's not
relaxed.
resisting.
Yeah.
That panic is always in there. It's always driving him.
And you keep putting energy into it, i.e. love, food. You make the wobble bigger.
And I'm making the point to the owner that she's, no matter how positive and loving she is to the dog, it's all built on a foundation of fear. Therefore, the fear is being reinforced. I would like to say fear can only be reinforced. We can talk again about what fear is.
He can learn, no, panic ain't working.
But as fear, it can only be reinforced. It can never be satisfied, allayed. Time goes by. It gets stronger.
So over the course of the weekend, that dog really got a lot more calm. But it's not irrelevant to note that on the first night, the owner said, I don't like people, I don't like men,
Right.
and I prefer the company of my dogs.
Exactly.
And that dog was terrified of men. And I think over the course of the next couple of days, she really got that he was reflecting her fear
Right.
of men. And she also said, I need to change the way I talk about my dog. I call him my baby.
Right.
I refer to myself as mommy, which
Right.
a lot of dog owners do.
Right.
And she realized that that wasn't healthy for him, that wasn't what he needed,
Right.
that he needed to move his fear and move energy. So
Right. The realization of what's really going on is so much more profound than that. Your dog is your heart. Your heart is your animal. It doesn't work by time. It's an energy system, which is why anytime you're in an energy system, for example, driving a car, your center of consciousness moves to your heart. That's how you get a feel for the road, a feel for the car. And if you really want to know what it's like to be a dog, you can pay very close attention to the difference between your thoughts, even your instincts, and your feeling, based on paying attention to what's going on while you're in your mind, your body-mind, when you're driving a car. So she made a huge breakthrough that her dog was her heart, that there is no difference between her. There's no block. There's no separation between her and her dog. So the canine mind as an energy circuit is so much more profound than my dog has this brain, he's smart, he's dominant, he's submissive, he's this, he's that. He has this personality. That is irrelevant. He is an energy circuit who becomes our heart, evolves to be our heart in every little nuance.
So the dog is part of an energy circuit with us, and he reflects our emotion or our heart. I'm a little bit unclear on heart. When an owner and a dog are part of this energy circuit, can you explain a little bit about heart? Where is the heart?
Warming up.
Is it when they come together?
Yes,
Is it
when the two are composed as one system, and each individual in the system is referencing their heart as their center of consciousness, then I believe the heart is now organizing all behavior.
So let me ask you, if I'm out in the yard with my dog and I've got the bite toy, and I throw the toy and he brings it back and he pushes into me and we play with the toy back and forth, is that heart?
Yes, you and he are forming one heart.
Okay.
One consciousness. You're the North Pole, he's the South Pole. And you're flipping polarity all the time because he's giving it to you, he's taking it from you. And that flip-flopping of polarity is how nature makes new energy. And new energy is essential to evolving, evolution.
So even, clarify this for me, even when an owner and a dog are part of an energy circuit that is really crazy, that's causing all these problem behaviors, is heart being created? Or what's
happening is, in a sense, nature is all the time in the world. So sooner or later, energy will move. So if you have a totally dysfunctional relationship with a dog and he ends up biting something or someone, well, energy did move. And we may think of it as the end of the world. We may even put the dog down. But some truth was expressed. And maybe that owner's never going to get it, and that dog was killed, and everybody involved in that person's life may not have get it, but some energy was expressed, and it affected each person profoundly. And they're going to store up energy. And little by little, they're going to be getting more intense expressions of that denied energy.
So for the
in their relationships, in their children, in life, in all these things, sooner or later they will get the message. And if they don't get the message and have a life of utter dysfunction, somebody else will look at that situation and say, oh, I see what really happened. You can see that around us in the way people are starting to rethink how to reform people in prisons and rehab and all these new modalities of healing that are coming up. Well, that's from looking at old methods that don't seem to be working. And we're getting more dysfunction and more dysfunction. So sooner or later, the unknown becomes known. Our choice is, do we want to pick up the pace here, and do we want to get it quicker in our own lifetime, in our own life? Do we want to be turning this old energy into new energy, or just being this passive relay node and storing it up and dumping it and
so you mean old energy, you mean
stress.
Stress, how all the things that happened to us as children that we've stored.
Yeah, then everything else. What
energy?
What happens is we get a kink in the system as infants. No matter how lovingly we're raised, it doesn't matter. Everybody gets a kink. And then that gets reinforced over and over and over again. And then we can only go out the way it went in. So if it was a judgment relative to people, it can only go out to people. So what people do is they turn their dog into a person. So that woman turned her dog into a person, which is why she spoke of it in a certain way, very revealing, our language. And that person was triggering her fears. And by trying to soothe that person, she was playing out an old pattern. This is what got her into trouble in the first place. So if she could now say, wow, I want to make energy move from now on. All right, yeah, I'm dysfunctional, I got fear, I'm stuck, you're stuck, so what?
Who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Who isn't?
Let me feel the fear.
Right.
And then how does that move? And then your heart will give you the answer.
Huh.
Your heart will give you the answer.
Well, that is all we have for today. But we have promised to revisit Rowe and look at a couple other dogs and the transformations they meant next time on Quantum Canine.
We don't have